welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock channel. If you're new around here, thank you so much for tuning in. And if you've watched us before but hasn't hit that subscribe button, please make sure to do so, or else Greg Berhalter is going to coach us until 2034. So please make sure to do that. But today, as you see on my background, on Braden's background right about Paxton Aronson, it's all about the Olympics. We're going to have the last preparation camp before the real deal happens, where hopefully we fight for a medal. But the roster's been released, and now we're going to face a very capable opponent right here in Japan. So, Braden, on the first point right here, on the lineup, what is the probable lineup in your opinion? What Mitrovic is going to go for, and who would you like to see starting this game? Remember, it's the very last camp, so any surprises in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see what Marko Mitrovic does in terms of the lineup and even the subs that come on too. I don't know how many subs are allowed. I hope it's as many as possible just because we brought 25 players to this camp for one game when the final Olympic roster is 18, not to mention the fact that we have 3 overage spots, only used 1 of them on this camp. So basically, over half the roster is fighting for a spot at the Olympics. I think it's fair to say that. So the fact that it's only one game, I think we spoke on this when we talked about the roster initially. It's such a shame, man, because all these players deserve the opportunity to at least play. And the reality is some of these players won't even get a chance to play in this game and will probably end up getting cut without having the opportunity to show themselves at the last chance here against Japan. But the probable lineup, I think Mitrovic will go first choice just because it does suck for the fringe players, but this is the last friendly before the Olympics, unless they somehow schedule a late closed doors one against maybe one of the other teams after they're already in Paris. It's possible, you never know. But realistically, this is probably the last one that we'll have. So I think he'll probably go with the first choice team. And it's big coverage too. It's going to be on major networks. It's being advertised as a big game. So we won't want to let the fans down. My first choice lineup, or at least I think the probable one, would be Patrick Schulte in goal. He's been, I think, the best goalkeeper and the most reliable, consistent goalkeeper throughout this process. Slonina hasn't been in all the camps, and he's actually the only other goalkeeper here. There was a couple others in the process, but that ended up not making the cut. At right back, Brian Reynolds has been the number one the entire process. Left back, same for John Tolkien. At the center backs, there's only 3 at this camp. I'd start Walker Zimmerman. He's the only overage player here, alongside Jalen Neal. It has way more potential than the other option, Jonathan Tompkinson, and is probably a better player already right now. In the midfield, Tanner Tessman at the 6, captaining the team. Well, not anymore because Zimmerman's here, but he was the captain of the age-eligible players at least, alongside his teammate Gianluca Busio in the midfield. And for the final spot, Jack McGlynn. It'd be nice to see us play with a 10 because I think there's a lot of players in this roster and even a couple who got left off that are capable and prefer to play at the 10, but that's not what Mitrovic do the entire cycle. So I think it'll be a 6 and 2/8, kind of like you see a lot of times with the main USMNT. The less said about them, the better right now, though. And then getting onto the forward line, Griffin Yao at right wing has played himself. He's only been in one other camp previously, but due to his season with Westerlo and his performances in that camp against Guinea and France, he's played himself into the starting lineup. I think he seems to be the best option here, also partly due to Taylor Booth's struggles with injuries this season. Left wing, Kevin Paredes, I think he's probably the highest ceiling player in this camp. I think it's fair to say he's even been with the main USMNT in the past for the November camp against Trinidad and Tobago. He was in the roster, even got a chance, I think, to start one of those games. So clearly the Federation raised him very highly. I expect him to be a key player at the Olympics. And then at the striker position, Duncan Maguire seems to be the number one this entire process. There's a couple of other options there, but I think that would be the first choice team that Mitrovic will probably go with. Now, what I would go with is actually very different, and this might be a bit of a controversial take, but I would start the majority of the fringe players because I think players like Brian Reynolds, Tanner Tessman, Busio, most of the guys I listed already, their spots are nailed on. They don't having the extra game practice would be nice, but I think the most important thing right now is finalizing the roster because there's a lot of hard decisions that need to be made. So my lineup, if I were in charge, would be For a goalkeeper, it doesn't matter who starts. I'd give them both a half. I think that's the fairest way to do it. They're going to be the two in the final roster, but this game could potentially determine who starts. So start Schulte if you want, since he's been the number one, but give them both at least a half a fighting chance for the number one spot. At right back, I'd start Harriel. He's the only other right back here. Like I said, Reynolds has his spot nailed on. Harriel's fighting for a spot in the roster, so give him the opportunity to claim that. And left back, same thing, Caleb Wiley. He's the backup left back here. Give him the chance to battle it out with Harriel. I think they'll be competing for a roster spot, so see who performs better between the two of them. At center backs, I would stick with the first choice pairing of Zimmerman and Neal, because Zimmerman's probably going to be the leader here, and this is his first time with the group. You want him to build up some valuable experience with the team. And Neal, this is his actually first camp. He wasn't at any of the three previous ones because of injury. He is back now, and I think, like Zimmerman, he needs valuable experience with this team, so I'd start him. And like I said, Tomkinson doesn't have the ability or the potential that Neal does have. In the midfield, the one main first-choice player I'd start outside the center backs, Tanner Tessman. Like I said, he's been the captain of this age group. I think having him in there at the 6 would be a big option and great for the French players to work with him. And the other 6 option, Aidan Morris, is also basically nailed on to the roster, so it doesn't really matter who you start at the 6 here, but I think I'd go with Tessman. At the 2 center mid spots, I'd go with Cole Batson and Rokas Pukstas. I think them and Kramaski are fighting it out, all 3 of them, for the final midfield roster spot, so I'd start the 2 that I rate the highest right now, Bassett and Pukstas. Kramaski has a lot of potential, but he can also just go to the U20 CONCACAF Championships this summer, and I'd prefer for him to do that. So I'd start those 2. And then in the forward line, I'd start Taylor Booth, but also Paxton Aronson, give them both a half. Booth, we still don't know how fully fit he is, so we want to ease him back in a little bit. He was supposed to be a huge key player for this team, but it unfortunately hasn't worked out like that. So he needs to earn the chance to have his spot in the roster, because even he isn't a lock anymore. So give him the opportunity, and Paxton as well. The striker, Damian Downs, he's the only one who hasn't been with this group. Maguire and Gomez have been the 2 the entire process, and this is Downs' first camp, so give him the opportunity to impress and maybe even take one of their spots. And then at left wing, I would start Paredes just due to a lack of options. You could maybe go with Cade Cowell, but personally, I don't rate him that highly at all. I hope he doesn't make the final roster. I think he will, to be honest, but I would start Paredes with the caveat that you can bring on Cowell at halftime if you want and move Paredes to left back. I think that's something we absolutely need to see at some point in this game, Paredes playing at left back, because that is a possibility. He offers that versatility, and with such a short roster for the Olympics, you need that positional versatility. So see how he does at left back for a little bit. But now that all of that's done, Yuri, what's your preferred team?
Well, I have one disagreement on the probable lineup. I think that Mitrovic is going to start Aidan Morris. Whether that's good or not, I think that he will. I think that the fact that he started him against France, he's coming off of a good run in the CONCACAF Championship. Of course, they didn't win. They ended up losing to Pachuca 3-0. But I feel like Mitrovic sees Morris as a player with a good engine to play the style that he wants to play with the 2-8s. Buzio does have a good drive towards the box as well. So this is what I think he will line up with. But on my desired lineup, I have some disagreements. I understand your point of giving these guys a fair chance, but in my opinion, some of them are there just for the experience, like Esmir Bajraktarevic, Kremaski. I think that they're realistically there for the experience because the USSF sees them as a valuable asset to the program going forward, and they're just going to be with the U20s. They don't really have the level to impact these games right here. I think Japan's a great opponent. I really like this Japanese team U23s. Did so well in the Asian Cup and earned their spot through there winning. And I think that it's important for us to show out, especially for the fans. It's being marketed. I like that there's some good marketing as opposed to Copa America, which we don't really see anything. There's some good marketing behind this game. I think Olympics is a great opportunity for the casuals to turn an eye towards the sport. And I think I really back this group to try to fight for a medal. I don't see why not. My lineup would be Schulte in goal, Reynolds at right back, and I have the same center back pairing, Walker Zimmerman and Neal, goes without saying. But lack of options there. I'll definitely start Dietz if he was available, but we have Neal, no issues with that. At the left back position, in my opinion, we are. Let's hope that Token plays better than he did against France, but I have him starting there as well. On the midfield, what I would start with, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky because that's the best area of the pitch where we are stacked. I would go with Tanner Tessman. I disagree. I think that he's the highest ceiling out of all these players in this camp. I can see the argument for Paredes, but I've been high on Tessman for a long time. I think that he is integral to the squad. The long balls, the calmness on the ball, and also the tactical awareness. I'll have him at the 6. And then on his side, I have McGlynn by his side on one side. I think he's a better player than Buzio. I know that he doesn't have the hype. Technically now Buzio's a Serie A player. I watched a lot of Buzio. I'll go with McGlynn ahead of him. And also on the other side, I'll have Rokas Pukstas. This one is a bit of a take based on the same perspective of yours, for him to have the chance and the right to fight for his spot. And also the matches that I've seen for Hajduk split this season, he does really well with the box to box. I think that both defensively and offensively he has improved a lot this season. Didn't get any opportunities prior to this camp, so I'd like to see him starting. Otherwise, if he's not there, then I'll go with Buzio. But I'd like to see Pukstas starting. And on the front 3, I like us to play with a false 9. It worked against France. Our best moments were when Maguire wasn't involved in play. No issues with Maguire. I think he's a great option off the bench, just like Kyle. I think off the bench these guys work. But I'll go with Yao on one wing, who I think is the most dangerous player in this squad. Paredes on the other one, and Paxton playing as the false 9. I thought he did really well against France, even playing as a winger. So as you see on Braden's jerseys right there, at Vitesse we saw him play really well. Very versatile player. I think I would go with these ones because I want us to win this game. I think it's extremely important to win, get him some confidence right before the tournament. But with all of these players that we've mentioned, I know some we think are just there for experience, but on the ones that are really on the fringe, which players do you think are fighting for their spot and need to show out, like Griffin Yao did, for example? Make sure they earn that spot in one camp. We've seen it before. Who do you think are those guys, Braden?
Yeah, there's, like I mentioned at the start of the video, there's a lot of roster spots still up in the air. I think the main ones being, like I said, Harriel and Wiley I think are fighting for the final fullback spot. We'll only bring 3. Reynolds and Tolkien, I believe, have the first 2 locked down. Personally, I would bring Harriel over Wiley just because, like I mentioned with Paredes, he can play left back. He offers that positional value. And Harriel is he's the only fullback really with experience as a center back. I'm not saying it's a lot of experience. I'm not saying he's the best option there. But realistically, you want to have 4 center back options in a roster. We're only going to bring 3 due to the very small size of the roster. So having an extra fullback that can slide in as center back if you absolutely need him to, I think offers more value. So I think they're fighting for a spot in the midfield. I think I've mentioned this already. Pukstas, Bassett, and Kramaski, I think, are fighting for one spot. I think Tessman, Morris, Buzio, and McGlynn have 4 locked up, and there will be a 5th one between those other 3 players. Like I said, I think Kramaski should go to the U20 CONCACAF Championships instead. Personally, I'd bring Pukstas over Bassett, even though I love Cole Bassett. But ultimately, that's why I had them both starting. I think they should fight it out for that spot, and whoever has the better game can be brought. And then in the forward line, I think for strikers, I think it goes without saying that we need to bring an overage striker. So realistically, I think the 3 in this camp, Downs, Johan Gomez, and Duncan Maguire, are fighting for one spot. It appears, based on a lot of things, it's going to be down to Maguire and Johan Gomez. It's interesting because Johan did actually both of them did score the first time we played this Japan team. It was our very first friendly in this U23 cycle. We beat them 4-1. Both of them ended up scoring in that game. We'll see if they can repeat the feat on Tuesday. But I think it'll come down to those 2, so they're fighting it out. I think Downs is just here for the experience and because he is a valuable asset to the federation, like you said, for Kramaski and Esmir, and then for the wingers as well. I think, how many spots does that leave left? I think 4 or so for the wingers, 3 or 4. I can't remember. My math is a little shaky right now, but I think all of them here, I think that Paredes and Yao are the only ones who are nailed on. Booth, Esmir, Paxton, Kate Cowell, I think they're all fighting for a spot there, and maybe even Diego Luna, who wasn't invited to this camp. Mitrovic did say that if someone isn't here, that doesn't mean their door is closed. Realistically, I think it probably does. Maybe I think he was only saying that because Maxi Dietz is injured and he would be one of the center backs. And that's actually the last one that I forgot to mention when I was talking about the fullbacks. I think that Neal and Tompkinson are probably fighting it out for a spot because we'll only bring 3 center backs. Zimmerman's going to be 1. I anticipate an overage guy to be the 2nd, whether it's Austin Trusty and Miles Robinson. Those have been the 2 names that have been rumored. So I think that Neal and Tompkinson and maybe Maxi Dietz, but he is injured, are fighting it out for that 3rd and final spot. And if it's between those 3, I expect Neal to get it.
Yeah, I think that Neal will get it as well. And I will go with a hot take. I know he's a not as well known of a name, but I'll go with Harriel over Wiley for the final roster. In my opinion, I would go with Harriel. I think he's more defensively solid, and I think that the likelihood of us having to rely on more defending players on the latter stages of this tournament is way higher than the ones going forward, because ultimately I think that going forward we have enough depth and we have enough quality. Like you mentioned, Kawo, I'm not the biggest fan of him, but I think that as a sub for this age group, he works well, has a lot of tenacity, very direct player, and the athleticism, as we know. So honestly, in my opinion, the biggest fights right here are for Neil to impress, I think. And I would say that even Maguire has to impress if he gets any minutes, because I anticipate, like you said, for us to get an overage striker. If Pepe comes in, then it's a whole different thing. Do we still call an overage striker? Honestly, I wouldn't. But if they do, then that means Maguire would be off. So I think that maybe he's fighting for a spot, especially after that very shaky and underwhelming showing against France. It's important for him to do something. And I really hope that Puxtas can do well in this camp, as I hope that Bassett does. But for some reason, I don't think that Bassett is in the likelihood to make the final cut. I don't know if it's because of age. If they're looking at this as a long-term, as a path to the A team, I don't think that Bassett cuts it. It's probably what USSF has in mind now. But with all these predictions and with the lineups that we've said, now it's time for us to give the official lineup, the official predictions for the scoreline. Japan, I really rate them. How do you see this game going? Do you think that we show out and impress the casuals, Braden, or is it maybe a reality check? Hopefully not like the one we saw today for the U.S.
I think anything would be better than what we saw for the U.S. Against Colombia today, as we record this. But it is interesting. Like I mentioned, this Japan team was the first team we played as this U23 cycle, and we beat them very convincingly, 4-1. Gomez, Paxton, Aiden Morris, and Duncan Maguire on the score sheet. Now, I think they've probably switched up their squad a bit since then. I know that Zion Suzuki, who was their starting goalkeeper at the Asian Cup, has come in. He was very shaky during that Asian Cup run, but I think for the U23s, he's at a very solid level. Also, American, by the way, born in Arkansas, so they stole him from us. He could be here with us, who knows, in an alternate universe. And Henri Chase as well, another American in their squad, playing for Stuttgart's Academy. I think he's a very solid center back. Definitely, we could have used him due to our lack of depth in the center back position. I will go with another win. I know this Japan team is very good, easily the best in Asia, and I think they'll do pretty well at the Olympics. But I back our boys as well. I think we have a real chance at medaling, because we have a very solid group and Mitrovic knows how to get the best of them. He's a U.S. coach that I actually do believe in, unlike the senior team manager. So I'm not going to go with another 4-1. I think that's a little bit too much big of a gap, but I'll go with, I think, a 2-1. I'll say a 2-1 win for the U.S. And hopefully I'm not being deluded here, and hopefully the boys don't disappoint.
Yeah, I will say I always had more faith in this group of players for this competition than our odds at Copa America. So I'm going to back them, but that 4-1 win, Japan was missing two players that I think are key. Araki, one of them, I really rate him as a winger. I expect to see him in the future playing in Europe. There are some links with Leicester. I think that it could happen for him. Araki and Fujita. Fujita is amazing. I think he's a great player, but I'm going to go with a U.S. win. I think we beat them 3-1, because I think that we have enough to create, and I really think that the midfield battle, we should be able to overwhelm them. Let's hope that we get that result, because again, the Olympics are, in my opinion, really relevant on turning that eye towards the sport, and also for some of these guys that I legitimately think have a chance of making the A team. It's good to get that on their resume, that they did something that hasn't been done before. I think that the opportunity is there for the taking. Obviously, it's going to be a difficult path because of the group we have as well, but I think that we can, and I really back them to do well. Do you think, in terms of relevance, Braden, I think that this has been a question in the past, would you rather see an Olympic medal or a Copa America semifinal run? And let's say Olympic final or Copa America semifinal run, even though that one looks very unlikely.
I was going to say, based on the performance we saw today, I don't know if that even a quarterfinal will happen based on the group we have right now. But I do think it's a tough one. This is a hot take. I would actually rather have an Olympic final, just because I think a Copa America semifinal, it's nice, but when you really think about it, it's getting out of the group. Very, very easy task given the group we have. We lose to Uruguay, beat Panama and Bolivia. We're out of the group. Easy as that. We get an upset win over Brazil or Colombia, which, based on the game, I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see how we do against Brazil later in the week on Wednesday. But that would be obviously a huge historic win. But that's only winning one knockout game. If you go to the Olympics and make the final, that's a big statement. You're going to beat at least a couple big teams getting through there, huge nations. And the Olympics, like you said, it draws the eye to the more casual viewers who maybe aren't as familiar with soccer in the US. They don't follow as closely as we do, as some of the USMNT fans do. And I think having a good showing in the Olympics, people will be tuning into the Olympics in general to support the country. So if our soccer team shows out, more eyes will be on the team, and there will be a more encouraging future, because our national team right now is so young. I think we forget that. They're going to be together for the next 10 years or so, but there's also going to be players who continue to break in from the youth teams. And if this Olympic team has a good showing, I think a lot of them have the potential to potentially be 18 players one day. So I actually do think that an Olympics final, although I will say winning gold would be a lot better, is more important in the grand scheme of things for growing the sport in the country.
I completely agree. I think that even a Copa America final wouldn't grow the sport, wouldn't have the potential to grow the sport unless we beat soundly Brazil or anything crazy happens. But I think that an Olympic final would definitely gather more eyes. And as I said, I really back, I know it's a hot take, but I back some of these guys to be integral parts of the national team. I don't know if for 26, but for 2030, definitely. So to have that under their belts would be amazing. But let us know in the comments down below what you think will happen. I know this Japan team is really hard to try to grasp any information on them. A lot of them play in the J League, but the J League, the Japanese Federation, is trying to change things a little bit, try to keep some players there for a little bit longer. But they are quality. They're a really good side. They showed that in the Asian Cup, and with all the pressure of the world, they still went out and did what they were expected to do. So it's going to be a good showing. Props on the USSF for getting this friendly, for getting the friendly against France. I'll give them props, credit where it's due. I think it's really important that we get these preparations, and let us know down in the comments down below. Do you think we're going to win this game? Are you going to be tuning in to watch this game? We're going to leave information where to watch it as well. And most importantly, do you think that we're going to win a medal this summer? Do you have any hopes up? So please make sure to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time.